Start. So yeah, so we were just talking offline about how we might talk about problem solving and life problems, growing as a person, how to do that, or maybe how the opposite happens and learning from that. And we were talking specifically maybe about a special trait or a special ability of human beings, which is imitation. I've been reading about this a little bit in Rousseau, and then in a book about learning by Scott Young, who wrote Ultra Learning a while ago. But this is a new book of his about learning, and it talks about how humans learn through imitation so well, and that it's a strength of ours even at a young age when chimps and what's the other species they talk about? Um Chimps and crows are about the same or better at problem solving reasoning as children. But when children are taught how to do certain tasks, they far exceed the chimps and the crows, who can't, learn by imitation nearly as much as the children.
Mhm.
So yeah, what do you think about that? Like I'm thinking of imitation, learning by example, being inspired, or maybe being, you know, learning that kind of stuff through bad examples, things. And I'm thinking also through like people you admire that you don't know very well, and other people that you admire that you do know well, or going down a level even like peer examples or things that can influence us.
Mhm. Yeah, but I was just thinking about just like humans, I think in particular, just something about the like sight. It's just like we rely on it more than a lot of other species. So,
Hmm.
um, I felt maybe that might be one aspect of maybe why we learn through imitating like a lot more effectively.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah. But I'm not so much wondering why. I mean, it seems like it's an
yeah.
obvious fact, but as to the utility of it, do you think, yeah, what are your experiences in learning from
Well,
examples, or being inspired, or sort of having negative examples that it maybe are like cautionary kind of tales for you?
that is, yeah, it seems to ring true. Like I remember I would just watch how my mom did a lot of stuff when I was small, and then I would make little mental notes in my head
Mm,
of like how I should do that thing. And I think that helped me a lot.
mm,
Um, like I think like with cooking, like even though I wasn't hands-on about it most of the time, like I would watch her and kind of get an idea of how to like cook beans or rice. And then when I like went off to college, it wasn't that difficult for me to figure it out.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's funny. You took that memory a long way. And it's funny that you were are you talking about some of these memories you're talking about kind of young?
Mhm. Yeah, because I would like have to like my mom would just have me watch her and then I would help her in small ways, like washing the dishes or like drying them as she cooked to like I kind of helped her clean as she went. So
Mm,
I kind of learned that way, even if I wasn't actually making the food itself.
mm. Did you ever learn things from peers that way?
Um, from peers, I don't have too many memories about that. Like Like I'm thinking maybe like in PE or something, like how to play a sport or like or something like that. Like I would um watch what my peers were up to and then like try to like imitate them. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. But yeah,
Yeah, it's
actually I don't have too many concrete memories of that.
mm. Well, what about so I mean in scientific experiments they found that children can learn simple things from by imitation. And you just talked about some more somewhat simple things with cooking and things. But what about moral examples? Or I'm thinking of not learning things directly,
Mm-hmm.
but learning sort of, I don't know, concepts or being inspired morally
Mm-hmm.
or otherwise by figures that maybe you've never met or never seen, but read about, or on a level down, like people you've seen and admired directly.
Mm-hmm. Um, well, yeah, like I went to Sunday school for years, as you well know, and yeah, I think I just learned a lot through stories. So
Yeah,
yeah, like
stories I think are really good and powerful and also
yeah,
complex, like, not simple moral sort of moral stories, but yeah, more complex mythology, or a lot of the
hmm
stories in the Bible are have a lot of subtlety to them that people
yeah,
don't always think about.
yeah. So yeah, we would learn biblical stories, stories of saints, and then of course, memorizing the Ten Commandments and stuff. Um, so yeah, I think that kind of gave me an idea of like how I should be or behave as a person,
Mm. I
and
guess
then kind
laws
of
are a little bit
influence.
different because they're sort of like abstracted orders on behavior.
Mhm,
In these situations, you shall or
mhm,
you shall not do this,
mhm.
although they
Yeah,
maybe are related. But
yeah, and
I
then like
believe, just throw out a vocabulary word, that the instructive biographies of saints are called hagiographies.
mhm.
Do you remember any of those that are particularly fascinating to you, or instructive, or inspiring?
Mm. Remember, I think recently, or I don't know if it was a recent thing I've heard, but I there was like a saint that was like hiding Jews during World War II, and I think
Oh,
recently
wow.
they might have been like canonized as a saint. Um, yeah, I don't remember too well, but
Hmm.
I found that story very touching.
Hmm. I wonder if the Nazis were looking at some Christians particularly.
Mhm.
'Cause- yeah, do you remember anything else about that story? Or was that story
Um,
particularly inspiring to you, or is just kind of salient because it's so, uh, yeah, involves so much risk?
yeah, that and yeah, it's kind of more a recent thing too. That I can remember.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, like I would like to refresh my mind on that saint because I think it is can be is a very inspiring story.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, I'm inspired by some historical figures. I mean, especially courage and moral courage. I mean,
mhm.
I sort of hope that I don't live in a time where I could possibly be called on like they might be. The example
Yeah.
of Socrates sticks out, where he was executed for seemingly doing very good things, and even knew, sorry, even according to Plato, would have been able to escape but chose not to. And
Mm,
to have to face those kinds of consequences and decisions,
mhm,
I I sort of, seems like a very hard thing, but
Mhm,
Yeah, it's a very inspiring example, I think.
mhm. Yeah, I think that's just a lot of several saint stories, just that they were, like, in dangerous times or where it would have been risky to do what they did, that they did it anyways.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of the early history of the church is characterized by martyrs, right?
Mhm,
I mean, the church sort of grew out of uh out of the Roman Empire, but was persecuted minority for a long time.
mm. Yeah, so I haven't had the situation obviously come up where I'm in that kind of I'm living in that kind of world, but, just kind of hearing those stories when I was a child kind of influenced me to, like, imitate, just kind of trying to be a good person in small ways.
Mm.
Um, it kind of had this idea in my mind that I should try to be more than what I am or what I might be tempted to do,
Do you
which
think
is
it
more
can
selfish.
backfire sometimes though, where a kid can be perfectionistic or too much of a sort of goody two shoes and they don't sort of make mistakes because of risk, because of curiosity, because of a feeling of a need for adventure that
Mm,
can actually teach them things at certain stages of development. I'm not talking about when you're 35, but when you're young, sometimes maybe you need to do certain things that aren't in the saint's biography.
mm. Well, yeah, I think it could be isolating because most kids aren't going to be that way. So you're kind of setting yourself or separating yourself apart, I think, from a lot of what common childhood stuff, like being like naughty or getting in trouble or something.
Yeah.
Um,
But besides
but
being
yeah,
separated, do you think someone can be sort of, yeah, too good because they're sort of kind of artificially following this way they think they should be, where as kids are supposed to be a little bit more maybe less self-controlled or less kind of concerned with how others see them. That's one thing that I'm wondering is if some kids are, you know, maybe they don't even have that much of a moral sense, but they know what others, and especially like a big thing like church, institution, authority figures and clad in black,
mm,
that's, cantor or whatever. They know what they think of them. And maybe because of that, what Rousseau would call vanity, they are acting and they're sort of
mm,
not developing properly, and they're sort of
mm,
developing their vanity, their
mhm,
sense, their concern for their reputation too early on to where it
uh-huh.
interferes with their development.
So you're kind of saying that they peop like they're not actually interested in being good, but just kind of looking the part
Mm-hmm.
or something.
Maybe a lot of
Um,
that, yeah. But also, yeah, the thing about development.
mhm. Well, yeah, I think it can happen in some cases, but I think like it's just kind of depends on how those kinds of teachings and ideas are kind of imparted. So I think with kids that we're kind of seeing that people or adults that seem to be more concerned with just how they look, of course, they'll pick that up because of imitation, like we're kind of talking about. So I think it just takes like kind of more thoughtful teaching and stuff, I think, on the adults to kind of get get the message through that it's not about just what you look like, but about actually trying to do good.
Yeah, I don't know how much that message would even be understood. Uh,
Yeah.
past a certain age, like below a certain age.
But yeah, just kind of with my idea though that kids are just very receptive, maybe more than or pick up on things more than we might notice. So like maybe they don't understand the concept exactly, but they can kind of sense like intentions or and things like that.
Hmm. Well, I mean, intentions and learning. Uh, yeah. I mean, there's differences between seeing people act and hearing stories. I mean, those two are
Mm,
very different things.
mm,
When they're being told stories, there's often a interpretation that is kind of being given to
mm,
them.
mm. But yeah, like if they put it that way, just it's important to not just be hearing stories like I've been talking about, but also just seeing people, I guess, do make do good and stuff.
What about yeah, were there other people that might have been good examples for you growing up? Teachers.
Mm, see. Yeah, well, yeah, I had pretty good teachers. I think in high school especially. Uh, but yeah, I'm not sure how much I learned from them in that way. Um, it was more like they were very supportive people, and I could tell they were like good people. But I'm not sure how much I actually learned from teachers about like in a way that I would like imitate them necessarily.
I had a teacher in high school that I had conversations with outside of class, like long conversations, like a couple hours. Um, yeah, I think it was just my thirst for sort of, yeah, more kinds of philosophical conversations. It was really good to kind of be able to have those, just to talk freely
Hmm.
and in that way. And some theology too. He was a
Hmm.
clergyman. So do you feel like you really learned that much from people growing up?
I don't feel I did. Aside from the examples I talked about, I feel I had to figure things out on my own more
Mm. How
by
did you do
myself.
that?
Well, I read a lot, so um, maybe I it was indirectly learning from people that way in a way. But
Yeah.
yeah, I just read a lot and I about whatever I wanted to learn. Um, so
Like
yeah,
what kinds of things?
like I learned about puberty and was kind of mentally prepared myself for the stuff I read would happen. Um, uh, I read about just people themselves, so I think that helped me develop some sense of empathy and
Sorry, what do you mean you read about people themselves, biographies?
yeah, just biographies or just characters in books. Um, so yeah, I learned about people that way. Uh, and yeah, there of course there were like upstanding kinds of characters. So I learned about
Do you remember any in
being a good
particular?
person. Um, what was that book called? That book about the Nazi soldier or something that's hiding Jews like secretly, or he's like linked to the Nazi party or something, or
Schindler's
the
List?
yeah, that one.
Oh, you read the book?
Yeah, I read that one. So yeah, I felt yeah, things like that. So Yeah, I felt I was kind of more alone in that kind of pursuit.
Mhm. Yeah. And books are a good thing for you to sit by yourself and learn information, reflect, have something of a conversation with the
Mhm.
author and maybe even with like the people,
Yeah.
the subjects.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
it's
yeah,
really
like
good
I,
to. Mm,
yeah, I think the root cause was just a lot of the isolation and stuff I felt when I was younger. So I felt like I had to learn things more by myself and not
mm,
really ask or look to other people.
mm. Yeah. Do you think there was some good things about that that you couldn't ask that you had to figure it out on your own? Maybe you learned better that way.
Yeah, because you always get a sense of boundaries with people and what you can and can't talk to them about. So there were things I felt I couldn't ask my parents.
Mm,
Um, so like I kind of knew that and kind of knew I had to figure it out some other way. Uh, so yeah, um, but yeah, like I always kind of struggled with the question that kids get asked a lot for assignments and stuff about who your role model was, or is.
mm,
And that was always kind of more difficult for me to write about.
mm. Yeah. But you didn't feel like you could answer one of the biblical figures or the saints or Jesus or something? Was
Uh,
that too remote?
like when I got those assignments,
Hmm.
felt like I couldn't because I felt like at school, like religion was looked down on or something in public school.
Oh,
Um,
geez.
so uh, I don't know where I how I picked up on that as a kid, but I had already picked up that there was some ideological stuff going on in
Right.
schools.
Well,
So
you mentioned, yeah, there being, at least you noticing in high school, there being a political bent to some of your textbooks.
yeah, like by then I was more aware of it, but I think before as a kid I kind of sort of had an idea or something, but even if I wasn't fully cognizant of it. Um,
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, separation of church and state, but
mhm,
then there's a difference between separation and sort of disdain or
yeah,
hostility or dismissal.
yeah. But yeah, like what about for you? Are there people you imitated or learned from?
I mentioned Socrates. He's been a
Yeah.
big person for me. Plato also, who wrote about Socrates, of course, who
Mhm,
was sort of a more mortal figure. But he's sort of interested. I'm sort of interested in a lot of the things that he is, philosophy, writing, um, yeah, using rationality even for sort of spiritual kind of means, which I think he got from both Socrates and Pythagoras.
mhm,
Pythagoras, I think, sort of like used rationality or math as sort of a religion, and maybe not really sort of a religion. I was listening to part of a John Vervaeke lecture today in the one about trying to address the meaning crisis. And he mentioned Pythagoras. It seems like Pythagoras underwent some shamanistic training, and there's even some sorts of indications that he did typical shaman type things like soul flight, which isn't said by scientists and people like Vervaeke to be an actual flight of the
mhm,
soul, as it's reported, but
mhm,
an experience that the body and mind create in order to, for a lot of reasons, but for one thing, to reframe your perception of a situation, which
Mhm.
makes sense, right? I mean, you literally feel like you're getting a bird's eye view of things. And so maybe you're not so bogged down in certain types of more uh, trifling kinds of quarrels or everything. And then you can see the bigger picture to sort of help your people, out of the metaphorical desert into the promised
Mhm.
land, or, help them with whatever problems they have right now. So, yeah, and shamans have many sorts of, I think he calls them cognitive distortion practices, um, like even through alcohol or other drugs, or some kind of bodily deprivation,
Mhm.
like not eating, not drinking water, sweat lodge, just all sorts of things that can help you to reframe things.
Mhm.
But anyway, yeah, Socrates, Plato, I don't know. And when I was younger, I mean, I liked certain artists, but I don't think any of those have that big of an impact on me right now.
Mhm.
And yeah. Yeah, when I was in college, I liked Norman Mailer a lot. I particular and he was kind of a larger than life figure, and I think kind of uh I don't know. He wrote a book called Advertisements for Myself, and sort of his,
Mhm.
yeah. But I really liked a book that he wrote that was sort of very different than the other ones, and there was like there was not that much of himself in it, like maybe he seems like in some of his other books, called The Executioner's Song. And this was a work of journalism, kind of like Truman Capote's In Cold Blood. I think maybe we've talked
Mhm.
about this a little bit. I think you've read In
Yeah.
Cold Blood, and I read The
Mhm.
Executioner's Song. And yeah, he just did lots of interviews and reading about this story in the late 70s, about a guy who had spent most of his life in jail, in and out of jail. And
Mhm.
he was let out, and then he kind of just like committed like a senseless murder or two, and ends up being executed. And
Mhm.
he just sort of writes about all the different characters. It's just, yeah, it's like really good journalism. He doesn't really embellish things, as far as I remember. And I just like that project. In a way, it's, yeah, it's like good journalism or anthropology. I don't know. I guess I see in all these people, I see myself as some sort of philosophical person, artist, creative, starting in maybe high school. I started to kind of see myself that way.
Mhm.
But yeah, younger than that, I don't really remember. I remember when kids would ask me what I wanted to be when I grow up. I would, when I was little, I would say scientist.
Mhm.
I could never understand even wanting to be like a sports star or something like that. Like I don't think that ever even occurred to me.
Mhm. Yeah, it's like I always wanted to be an artist when I was little.
Mm. Like a visual artist.
Yeah, visual like painter and like drawing and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, you liked doing that, and you ended up taking a course in college, right? But then you kind of
Yeah,
did less of it over time, and you feel like you've
yeah,
kind of scratched that bug at this point.
yeah. It's like I still enjoy painting when I do it, but I don't go out of my way to do it really. Um, yeah, so yeah, I think it's kind of closed for me now.
Well, what about going into the future? Do you have any people that you admire,
Mm,
or any people would you like to imitate? Like I've talked to you about in your career search. Well, you kind of know where you're going now, but before that, I was kind of talking to you about trying to find a mentor. A lot of people are really big on that idea. I am.
Mhm,
I think I need to find a mentor. And I know Tyler Cowen, I think, really encourages people to find a mentor. That I just think, yeah, like talking to a person directly, I think can kind of speed up the process of thinking and understanding.
mhm,
Talking to the right person, of course, who can
mhm,
kind of sense maybe where you need to go.
mhm. Yeah, it's like I met someone at work in the field I'm now looking into. So yeah, the conversations have been great, but I'm just not sure we're at the mentor level yet, especially because our schedules are so different now.
Mm,
So I see that person less. But yeah, I feel I do need that kind of person too. And I've still been kind of lacking as well.
mm.
Um, so yeah, kind of maybe I'm kind of looking at like you are.
I've encouraged you to try to, what I've heard is, you can just like try various people and kind of offer to like, buy them a coffee and kind
Mm,
of make clear that you're only asking for 15 minutes of their time, so that
mm,
there isn't much time commitment and, you know, try not to ask for much. But then, of course, within that 15 minutes, you can both sense maybe whether there's potential for more, if there's
oh,
interest
okay.
in more. I mean, that's one
Mm,
way I've heard to kind of approach people to interview and maybe possible, yeah, mentorship if that sort of naturally develops after that.
mm. Oh, it sounds like a
But
good
either way, you
idea.
learned something. Okay. Well, anything else about learning or imitation? I feel like there's a lot more to talk about, but not sure about for today.
Mm.
Learning,
Not so
imitation,
far.
examples.
Just that I hope to find some more role models soon or in the future. Because yeah, this conversation made me realize it might be kind of lacking
Hmm.
at the moment. So
Well,
it'd be
good.
nice to find that.
Yeah, yeah, I think people really need those. I think we're really inspired by people or really discouraged by people too if we
Mhm,
see too much of it, too much of certain behaviors or types around us. And
mm,
yeah, it can kind of lead us down paths we probably don't want to go down. So yeah, I
mm,
mean, I don't know. Humans need contact, they need connection. Okay. Well, yeah, let us know if you find one and
mm,
let you know if I see anything inspiring myself.
mm. Sounds good.
Okay, well, take care.